Hey guys, I want to talk a little more about the book that I wrote about Diane Downs. I actually did that book for her brother. He had asked me to do something in defense of his sister, and I did. I went ahead and took a look at the case from his perspective, and I did write it from the viewpoint that she actually was not the person who shot her children. I've done further research, of course, and I no longer find that possibility reasonable. That's just my opinion. Hey, she could be innocent and I could be wrong. I don't know if she was treated fairly. I do know that at the time of the murder, one of her daughters was killed and her other daughter was shot but not killed. Thankfully, she survived, and then her little boy was shot, and sadly, he was paralyzed, my gosh, from what his mother did to him. So two of the children did survive, and one of her daughters was murdered the night that she claimed that a random stranger who was supposedly standing in the middle of the highway waving her down, I think she called him the bushy-haired stranger, that she claims that he shot her children. And her too, in the arm, kind of like Darlie Routier with that arm injury. Thankfully, her two surviving children were adopted actually by the prosecutor and his wife. She actually had 3 surviving children because she got pregnant fast right after the tragedy. And then when that baby was born, I believe she was put up for adoption right away. Of course, her mother was in prison at the time, I think. So thankfully, at least the surviving children are in loving homes with loving families who are protecting them. But here's the thing that I don't think people understand. I think she was treated fairly, because even though people did say a lot of nasty things about her, if you had seen those news broadcasts, you might be saying nasty things about her too. She was laughing. She was having fun when she was talking to the police officers. She was flirting with them. She was getting a kick out of it all. So if she wasn't being treated fairly at the time, I really think that it was just the natural reaction to her acting like she thought the whole thing was funny. She loved the attention. Oh my gosh, she craved the attention. She was right in front of the camera every chance she got. And people didn't like that. I mean, her daughter had just died. And she was just a giggling away. And in one interview especially, oh my gosh, she was complaining about how difficult it was for her to tie her shoes because of her injury on her arm. And I think that interview really sent the public into a spin, because one little girl lost her life. Another little girl was shot and seriously injured. And her little boy was seriously injured too. And all she could do was sit there and complain because she had a tough time tying her shoes. I do think that the stereotypes at the time maybe were a little bit unfair to her because she had cheated on her husband and she was cheating with a married guy at work. And she evidently wanted to be a surrogate mom, and everyone thought that was crazy at the time. That was before surrogacy, became more acceptable. I think a lot of people were offended by her too because they were comparing her in the news with Princess Diana. So I think that immediately turned all the Princess Diana fans against her. And they kept saying she was so beautiful, and it was like people were going, "What? Where is this person that you're saying is so beautiful?" Because she wasn't. She was rather ugly on the inside, for sure, and on the outside too. Because there was nothing attractive with the way she was flirting with those police officers and giggling along. Oh my gosh. Do I think she got a fair trial? Yes, I do. I think she got a fair trial. Because I think it is her who shot her children. And I think that case really turned on one witness. There was a driver who came along after the shooting when Diane Downs, I believe she actually testified that she was racing to the hospital to get help for her children. But there was another car on the road that night, I think, that Diane Downs didn't expect to see because she was out on this, dark, deserted highway. And this other car came up behind her car, and the driver testified that her car was moving very slowly and that he actually sped around her because she was going so slow. I think that was like the clincher for the jurors. That and her entire storyline just seemed impossible to believe. She said there was a bushy-haired stranger waving her down. She pulled over. Who does that? If you're out in the middle of the night driving around with your kids in the car and there's some bushy-haired stranger waving you down, are you going to stop? No, you're not. But she claims she did to help the stranger. And then he said that he wanted the car. And she said that she threw her keys. Oh, that's the other thing, though. First, when she stopped, she didn't just roll down her window and say, "What do you want?" Her story is that she stopped and she hopped out of the car and said, "What do you want?" That makes no sense either, right? And then he wanted the keys and she threw them, but she didn't really throw them. She jumped back in the car after he shot everyone. It's absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. That and her story has changed a few times. It's kind of like the Darla Routier case. It's like, yeah, pick a story and stick with it, because if people don't believe you already, it's probably not a good idea to keep changing that story, right? So I just wanted to give you that added detail that when I wrote that, I actually was writing it for her brother and trying to view the case from his perspective. But my opinion is that she is guilty as sin.